Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. Hope you're well today. Hope it's payday for you. It's travel day for me, and I'm behind schedule. You get up and you get moving, and you start thinking about all the things you got to do, and you realize, oh, I got to get going. So I don't know how long we go today, but we'll pack it all in. Cool top 10 list today. Of course, we'll preview the Arkansas Razorbacks. I'll give you some updates on some things I've learned here as of late. It's Arkansas game eve here in Starkville. A lot going on. And, of course, the state picks up a new football commitment yesterday and a new baseball commitment. We'll talk about both in the final segment of the show. But, yeah, we got to get going, man. Got a lot going on. Got to get up to Arkansas. 11 a.m. kick. 11 a.m. kick for sure. Expecting a good crowd. I don't know how good it's going to be. I mean, the thing you think about, there's got to be a lot of pent-up demand. They haven't had a chance to see the Razorbacks in Fayetteville for over a month. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, have been looking forward to that. I mean, of course, it's not that big a drive down to Arlington, to go see those guys down there. But yeah, reality of it is there are a lot of people that just don't go to road games. There are a lot of people that don't go to 11 a.m. games. And so you kind of got to measure that, too, against the fact that they're 2-5. And so I think it'll be a good crowd. Do I think it'll be capacity? No, not for 11 a.m. If it had been, a 6 or 7 p.m. kick, yeah, I think it would have been packed out, even with a 2-5 record. I mean, I say packed out. I mean, it wouldn't be a capacity crowd, but it would have been, I think, a much better crowd for a night game. So I think in some respects we're kind of catching a break, getting an 11 a.m. kick on the road. Just maybe I'm wrong. But that's how I feel about it. So we'll see. So if you're on the fence about going, we'd love to have you. If not, we'll look forward to you supporting us from afar. Mississippi State needs to win this ball game. Arkansas needs to win this ball game. And staffers on both teams have come out this week and said, hey, this is a must-win situation. So somebody's going to get their first SEC win of the year tomorrow, and somebody's not. Somebody's really going to be really up against it when it comes to bowl eligibility. And, of course, you look at it, State's 3-3, they're 2-5. There's a little more desperation, you would think, on their side. But I think if you're Mississippi State, you look by this whole thing and you start thinking to yourself, how many more opportunities are we going to have to win a game on the road? Because we're going to have to earn bowl eligibility on the road. Of course, you look at our schedule and you say, well, that Southern Miss team doesn't look to be very good. Okay, so what are you counting besides that? So you go and play a 2-5 team, you got to find a way to win the game. And this is a fan base and a team that needs something good to happen. Now, I understand we are a little bit healthier. I do expect Woody Marks to travel, unless something changes today. How much he plays, I can't tell you. I know he wants to play. I know Woody Marks well enough to know he wants to be out there with his team. He loves the game of football. He understands what's at stake. I know he wants to play. If he's medically cleared, he's going to play. Is he 100%? No. And I don't know when Woody ever is because he plays so hard, right? DeMonte Russell is back. I understand that he's had a good week of practice, so we expect him to be back. Of course, we hadn't had him for a little bit, and so that will help, kind of getting him back. The Will Rogers situation, I expect Will to travel. I don't expect Will to play. And again, here we are, 24 hours away from kicking off. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And then I think it's a week-to-week deal from there. And so, we'll see how things progress. But we're going to kind of outline the Arkansas Razorbacks and kind of take a look at the season, kind of what's going right, what's going wrong for them. We talked a little bit about close ball games. And, again, it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just does. You start thinking, here we go again. At some point, somebody's got to make a play. In this league, people don't lose games to you. You've got to go win them. That's just how it works. It's never a situation where late in the ball game, it's like, well, they're going to turn it over on downs. No, somebody's got to make a play. The skill level is too high in this league to just sit back and hope somebody loses. There's so many times in our history that we have played not to lose and ultimately lost rather than playing to win. 2017 against Alabama comes to mind. But I think this is a Bulldog team that is healthier than they have been, as they should be after an open date. And, of course, you're able to rest some guys against Western Michigan. So, we should be about as good a shape as you could expect us to be in, all things considered. And, we'll see what happens with Mike. Mike Wright, obviously a multi-game starter within the Southeastern Conference, has got some pretty big skins on the wall too. So I do think Mike's a starter tomorrow. I think we've talked about it all week. It's not breaking any news here, but I think it kind of changes the dynamic of what you want to do in a way that makes it difficult to prepare for Mississippi State, because you've had the benefit of 2 weeks to prepare. It's not like that Will Rogers, suffered a little bit of an injury yesterday. This happened 2 Saturdays ago against Western Michigan. So State has had plenty of time to prepare. So we'll see what that looks like. It's not like a normal situation where you find that, we get in the training room on Sunday and on Monday it's like, hey, you're going to have to do this and you got 4 days to prepare. That's just not the case. So it's never a good time to have an injury to your quarterback. But if you're going to have one, having one before the open date is probably the best case scenario. And again, we wish Will the absolute best in his recovery. And we hope it's not something that is long-lasting. I've been told he will be back this year, just not sure when. So we'll see. But, I do expect him to travel, and I think it's invaluable to have Will Rogers on the sidelines, even if he's not available to play, just because of the fact I think, Will's a guy that knows the team, also, too, knows defenses, kind of knows exactly what people are trying to do against us. So having him there as a resource would be invaluable. All right, so let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company. And I love them first, if we're going to be honest about it. I did. I loved them first. I was a customer long before they were a sponsor. But, man, I tell you what, it's been a great relationship. And really, really excited about kind of the future, if you think Bulldog Burger Company is done kind of expanding their empire, I think you're probably kidding yourself a little bit. These 3 great locations right now, of course, Stark Vegas here on University Drive, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Hey, the takeover's real. Right? And so I wouldn't rule that out, but I know this. We got 3 great ones that we can enjoy. You can go by and have those spring rolls as our appetizer. Get that great restaurant quality hamburger. And, of course, that chocolate shake to go. It depends on what I'm feeling, right, when I go in there. But the thing about it is there's so many great things on the menu. No matter what I'm craving or have a hankering for, I can get it satisfied at Bulldog Burger Company. It's not just about hamburgers, even though that's what they do best. You can go in there and have that BLT salad. I like it grilled. You may like it fried. We finally got that right, didn't we? I like those Sloppy Joe sliders. I like the sweet heat chicken sandwich. There's a lot to like at Bulldog Burger Company. Go by and find your own favorites. And again, be sure and get those spring rolls. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, let's take a quick look at the Arkansas Razorbacks. We talked about series history on Wednesday, so we're not going to get into that today. Of course, Arkansas with an 18-14-1 lead in the series. State has won 8 of the last 11. But looking at this year's 2023 Arkansas team, if you recall, when we first started picking games and picking teams, I had Arkansas 6th in the West this year. And then I got to thinking as we got closer to the season, I said, you know what? I think they'll ultimately beat Auburn. And then Auburn will be 6th, and Arkansas will be 5th. And a lot of it had to do with KJ Jefferson. Huge KJ fan, not just as a player, but as a person. Really like him. Of course, we had a chance to interact with him during the recruiting process. Great young man from a great family, and happy to see that he's done well at Arkansas. I think he fits what they want to do perfectly. And they talk about the offense is kind of built for him. I don't know if that's really been amplified the way maybe it should be. I know they're trying to kind of do some things around his skill set to make him get going. But we knew way back in the spring that this team would go as far as the very talented shoulders of KJ Jefferson could take them. We knew there was a rebuilt defense. Apparently they've hit on some guys in the portal. This defense has been good this year. And then in addition to that, we thought Rocket was going to be a big-time player and potentially challenge for the SEC Player of the Year type honors. He was a preseason All-American, and he's got 91 yards, I think, on 34 carries. And you hate that for a young man, especially in, quote, the money year, to be less than 100%. He's not going to play this week. They say he's out at least 2 to 4 more weeks. And I think if I'm his agent, I'm probably telling him we just need to shut this thing down. But you hate it for the young man. And it's really kind of changed the complexion of things. Even with Rocket, I thought they were going to be a bowl team, but not a Florida Bowl team. Now, without Rocket, you look at this and say, man, they played so well. Guys, you're 2-5, right? You've lost 5 games in a row. I don't care who you are, where you're from. Your record is what you are. How many times have we dealt with that ourselves? It's like, man, we played really good here. Man, wish we could have won that one, but we didn't. So how did we get to 2-5, Arkansas? Well, you open up with a win over Western Carolina against the Catamounts. You expected that one to be, kind of a walk in the park, and that's the game that Rocket gets injured in. And he hadn't been the same since. They win that game 56-13. And, it's like you can't tell anything about a team in a game like that. You just can't. But they won the game. They took care of business. And, again, the concern right out of the gate is about Rocket. And that has lingered throughout the season. The next week, they take on the Kent State Golden Flashes. You may recall we threw a no-hitter against them in baseball. This ball game was kind of weird. It's in Fayetteville, and again, it's the first game without Rocket. And you think, well, they should be able to just kind of line up even with vanilla offense and be able to win this game handily, but they didn't. Arkansas wins 28-6 in this game, and Kent State actually led early. But you look up there just before the half, it's a 14-6 game in Fayetteville. And people up there are thinking, what's going on with our offense? Are we really going to be that pedestrian without Rocket? They get it done, but it was not an impressive win. And you can say, but Steve, it's Kent State. Yeah, they're 1-6, guys. They're 1-6. Their only win on the season is to Central Connecticut State University. Did you know that Central Connecticut State University had a football team before I just told you that? Yeah, chances are you didn't. And you look at these numbers, too. It's ridiculous. Like this Kent State game, right? They lose to UCF 56-6, lose to Arkansas 28-6. They beat the Central Connecticut State. I guess that's the Demons. And then they lose to Fresno State 53-10, Miami of Ohio 23-3. These guys can't score. But all of a sudden you look up at the half in Fayetteville, they're right there in the game. And I think in many respects that may have been a harbinger of things to come. Again, you get to the Western Carolina game, other than being a little bit banged up, there's not any real question marks. And you see Kent State, a team that now in hindsight, even though this is a win, you look back and say it's even less impressive today than it was on September 9th. The next week, it's BYU. And, KJ had a big game against him last year. But you look at it now, and it's like they lose that game 38-31 in Fayetteville. That's when I think most of us thought, it'll be a competitive game, but Arkansas will find a way to get this thing done. And it was a night game. They had the big crowd, almost 75,000 people on hand. And again, you look up at the half, it's 24-21. You're thinking, what's happened here? And then in the fourth quarter, in the second half, Arkansas wears down. They score 7 points in the second half and get outscored 17-7 and ultimately lose 38-31. Have you kept up with BYU football this year? BYU football? Have you? Have you looked at BYU? I'm asking you. How many games have you watched of BYU this year? And you said, well, Steve, it was a great game between a couple teams that play hard, a very physical brand of football. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. You kept up with BYU football though? They're 4-2 right now. And you start working through this thing here. They opened up 3-0, including that win in Fayetteville. And ever since then, it's kind of been, hit or miss. They've lost 2 of the last 3. Lose at Kansas. They do beat Cincinnati. We won't go down that rabbit hole. And then they get beat pretty good by TCU. So kind of an average BYU team. And they go into Fayetteville and win. Those are things you start looking about. And transitive properties don't really extend in college football. They don't, because it's all about matchups, right? I mean, you may match up differently with another opponent than say Arkansas does. Everybody's got different skill sets and offensive and defensive philosophies. So football is about matchups. And for some reason, Sam Pittman likes a matchup against LSU. We've talked about that when it happens. For some reason, Sam gets these guys up to play, and they feel like they can beat LSU, and they have. And in the 3 years he's been there, they have. But every game has been very competitive. If memory serves me correct, I think every game is within a score in the Sam Pittman era. And it shouldn't be that way. I mean, let's just be honest about it. If you look at the Cadillac way that LSU recruits, LSU, and all due respect to Arkansas, despite their resources and Tyson Chicken and Walmart and all that good stuff, LSU should have a talent differential over Arkansas because of the way they recruit. Period. But for some reason, Sam is able to kind of make this thing work. Again, it's about matchups. And I think a lot of it's because Arkansas and LSU do a lot of similar things. And I think Sam is like, you know what? I know what they want to do because we do some of the same concepts, and here's how we stop it. But for whatever reason, they do a good job there. It hadn't been really the case with A&M. They lose to A&M in Arlington again. And I thought Arkansas might be able to get them. I did. Thought they might be able to do it. But 34-22 loss there. They go to Oxford. Many of you watched that game. I watched it too. I think it's the first time I've watched Ole Miss play this year. And I was calling the Hogs in the bedroom. And apparently they didn't hear me and kept a little bit short. But I thought the way they managed this game was really smart. Let's just kind of eat up some clock. Let's get behind our offensive line. It was kind of revamped. And they're having some struggles, especially in pass protection. For sure. Having a ton. But they can run the football a little bit, even without Rocket. But you look up here at the plays. Arkansas ran 68. Ole Miss ran 70. And Arkansas penalized 10 times, and a lot of those were pre-snap penalties, of course, with that kind of new-look offensive line. And I don't know if it's just a matter of just guys fighting for a job or just a little bit anxious in the moment. But they had a ton of pre-snap penalties in this ballgame. And, of course, they end up changing, going back to the original offensive line and come up just short, 27-20. Of course, Arkansas had a chance to climb in there, make it really interesting late, and KJ threw a pick. But Arkansas was in it, man. It was a 10-7 game, and then 17-7. Arkansas scores in the third quarter, and you get a couple field goals, and all of a sudden you're in striking distance. You think, hey, man, this is a real thing here, right? I mean, 17-13, you're a possession away. And it just felt like if Arkansas could ever get the lead, they might be able to hang on to it. But Ole Miss just simply had more weapons to work with. And then there's last weekend's game at Alabama. Again, I thought Arkansas kind of sleptwalked through this game early. I don't know if you had a chance to go back and watch it. You know, KJ basically kind of put that team on his shoulders in that second half and said, you know what, guys, we're not going to lose. They did, but KJ kind of took over. And early in that ball game, they had some sustained drives, just couldn't finish, and had to take a couple field goals there. And so it's apparent that Dan Eno skipped it out some things pretty well early in the game. But as those drives got a little bit deeper in Alabama territory, they weren't able to get it done. You know, they just simply weren't able to get into the end zone. And that's the thing. You're not going to beat Alabama with field goals, right? You got to be able to put points on the board because you have those two sustained drives. You get two field goals. You're feeling good. Okay, we belong. We're in it. And then they hit a 79-yard touchdown pass. And now they lead. It's like everything you've done. Okay, we've got this great game plan. Everything is great. And I don't care who you are, there is going to be a little bit of a setback emotionally when that happens. And the next thing you know, you look up, it's 21-6. As well as you played in the first quarter, you played equally as bad in the second. And dug yourselves a hole that was almost insurmountable to dig out of. And, of course, give Alabama some credit for taking points early in that third quarter to make it a three-score game, you know, with the field goal to make it 24-6. And then KJ kind of got moving and made some things happen. Of course, the big drive in the fourth quarter, and they ended up ultimately going for two to pull within a field goal and had a chance late. And now the Alabama defense just, stood up and said, nah, we got it from here. But that's the schedule so far for them. Of course, they'll get a week off next week, and then they'll head to the Swamp for their final road game of the year, and they close at home with Auburn, FIU, and Missouri. And again, you're 2-5. So essentially you have one game to work with. We've all been there before. You got big weekend plans. For some reason, it just didn't work out. Maybe life gets in the way. Maybe you want to head down to the casino.
maybe take some of their money. I like to do that. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game for you. Dive into truly realistic casino experiences featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands. And the best part is you don't even have to wear pants. How cool is that? Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code Boneyard. That's promo code Boneyard to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all. Because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks, the more you play, the more you'll win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. Again, that's promo code Boneyard.
Hey, Bulldog fans, do you like me? Do you enjoy live entertainment? Whether it be a comedy show, a play, a ball game, a concert, those events require tickets. Make shopping for tickets more convenient than ever with TickPick, the original no-fee ticket marketplace that brings you the best prices for all the events you love. And now, TickPick is partnering with Zip, so you can shop now and pay later. Zip allows you to shop at TickPick and split your payment into easy installments. Visit TickPick.com, or better yet, install the TickPick app from the App Store and use promo code ZIP20 for $20 off your very first purchase of $199 or more with Zip. Zip can only be used for U.S. purchases, and Zip may charge a fee at checkout. Certain merchant products, goods, and service restrictions may apply. See Zip's terms of service at www.zip.co/US. Loans through Zip are originated by WebBank, except for Zip-originated loans in Colorado, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maryland. Check out with Zip at TickPick.com. Shop for all your tickets at TickPick. Check out with Zip to split those payments into easy installments. Again, check out with Zip at TickPick.com. As good as Florida has been in the swamp and as beat up as Arkansas is, would you really take Arkansas against Florida in the swamp right now? If you had to make a bet, I think you're taking the Gators. And if you don't think that looms large in the minds of Arkansas fans, players, and staffers, I think you're kidding yourself a little bit. They understand. Listen, hey, they could go beat Auburn, FIU, and they could get Missouri. And as well as Missouri's playing right now, I don't know that you would take Arkansas. But I think you look at that trip to the swamp and you think, okay, well, we got one game of margin for error, and in 2 weeks we go to the swamp. That's probably a loss. So you can't look to absorb one here. So this is going to be their Super Bowl. And again, all week long, Sam Pittman and the guys said, hey, listen, we're not going to back away from it. We understand what's expected. And he said, hey, my kids understand why I put that on them. It's like, I just feel like you got to be direct with people. And I like Sam Pittman. I absolutely do. And every year that we cover Arkansas and I watch his press conferences, I think he's very engaging. I think that he is a guy that articulates his points well, but he's got a little bit of that Southern charm about him, so he kind of feels like he's your Uncle Sam, not from the federal government, but maybe Uncle Sammy, that wears overalls and goes coon hunting and things like that. I mean, he's very folksy. He's also a good football coach. I know Arkansas fans are a little bit disappointed with how things have gone the last couple of years, but a lot of that's because last year KJ was banged up during the middle stretch of the year, and now here you are, Rocket Sanders. But this Arkansas defense playing much, much better. Much, much better. So I'm interested to see kind of how we attack this group. A couple of good defensive ends, for sure. Landon Jackson was your SEC Defensive Player of the Week, and that kind of came out of nowhere. He's been a good player, but he hadn't played that well. And to stand up and do it the way that he did against Alabama, that is to be commended. I don't know how anybody could look at that and think anything otherwise. I mean, that's a great game, and you know that kid's going to come in here with a lot of confidence, kind of understand what's on the line this week. I mean, it's Sam Pittman's fourth season, and I've read some people out there suggesting that perhaps Sam will be fired if they don't make a ball game this year. I don't know that I agree, and I don't know that that's the right move, to be honest with you. I don't. I think when you look at what's fair, and of course, if you don't win enough, it doesn't matter what's fair. But when you start running through this and you consider the injuries they've had to deal with. And I understand injuries are part of football, and it's your job to build depth. I don't know if you can run Sam off this year, even if it goes in the tank. I mean, like, let's say they go 3-9. I'm bringing it back. I know I don't have any emotional investment in Arkansas, but I'm just going to tell you, if that were me, I think Sam Pittman may not have been the best of hires, but I think Sam Pittman's getting an awful lot out of this football team. And of course, I don't follow them as closely as other people do, but I don't know. I'd like him to stay in the conference, and I'm sure there's some Arkansas fans listening and say, "Well, Steve, you're just saying that because you want Arkansas to remain mediocre." Not really, not really. I mean, I don't want you to hire Houston Nutt back, because he owned us. But I just think, when you look at the totality of things, I think maybe, and Sam's had some extensions. Not that finance has ever been a problem at Arkansas. I just think it's one of those deals where I think if you stick with them, you're going to be okay. All right, looking at the numbers here, offensively, Arkansas has scored 209 points this year. So they're averaging, 29.9 points a game? Yeah. And they've allowed 176, so they're giving up right at 25. So a lot of these games are close, kind of indicative of what we've talked about. A lot of these games have gone down to one score. Pretty interesting stat here, 54 points off turnovers for Arkansas. So we've got to make sure we take care of the football. They've been outgained when it comes to first downs. Arkansas has gotten 126, a lot 133. Most of theirs coming via the pass. Did you expect that at the end of the year? Third down, KJ's been pretty good, but 64 passing, 51 rushing. I think if at the beginning of the year, when you looked at these numbers, you would probably be surprised to see it skewed more towards the passing side. On the ground, Arkansas has run for just 769 yards. I think a lot of that, too, is they don't want KJ running too much. And I get that, too. They've been outgained 933 to 769. That's your net rushing, averaging 109 yards a game on the ground. I would have expected that number to be over 200 back in the preseason. Passing yardage as a staff here, 1,478 yards, and opponents 1,526. So you can see this Arkansas offense having some real challenges. Total offense, 2,247 yards total offense. They've allowed 2,459. They've run 451 plays, though. Opponents just 438, but averaging just over 320 yards a game. Let's get into some more individual stuff here. This Arkansas team's been penalized a good bit, too. And a lot of that Ole Miss game, basically, that's just kind of a chemistry and cohesion issue of moving guys around on the offensive line. That's what you'd expect. What's crazy, too, we talked about how good the specialists are. And of course, Cam Little is a known commodity. But they got this kicker out of Australia, and got him to go to Arkansas. Quite a culture shock. But he says that Sam Pittman has changed his life. And I think he's changing things, too, for Arkansas. 48.5 yards per punt. Did you know that? It's ridiculous. All right, sacks by Arkansas. They have rushed the passer and had 21 sacks on the year. They've allowed 27. And a handful of those came last week against Alabama. How about that? Field goal attempts, Cam Little is 11 of 12. They've had one onside kick and didn't get it. Red zone scores are really, really good in the red zone. And you'd expect that, when you've got a dual threat guy like KJ, because he keeps you honest, right? 22 of 23 possessions have ended with scores, 16 of those touchdowns. They haven't missed a PAT, and they're 2 of 3 and 2-point conversions on the year. Arkansas, quarter to quarter. We talked about earlier this week how important it is to win the first quarter. The last 5 years, 4 of those 5 times, the team that trailed after one lost the ball game. The one exception, the teams were tied. So a team that has trailed has not won the game. Now you look at Arkansas's numbers here. The first quarter has been their most productive quarter from a scoring efficiency standpoint. 61 points, other 209 come in the first quarter. Opponents just 44. Now it kind of flips in the second quarter, and maybe that's a time of possession thing. Who knows? But 51 points for the opponents, and then just 44. And then in the fourth quarter, Arkansas has been really good in the fourth quarter. 57 points scored, 37 allowed. And, of course, some of those came last week against Alabama. I'm sure they wish that I had some against BYU. But 61 points in the fourth quarter, the most productive quarter for Arkansas. So if we can get out of that in the game within the game, if we can get out of the first quarter with the lead or even, you like State's chances. Because in the middle of the ball game, they've been a little bit more mediocre. Rushing numbers this year, too. Like the best rushing game they had on the season was BYU. Once we get into SEC play, things have changed considerably. You had the big game against LSU, obviously. But just 42 yards rushing against Texas A&M. Just 36 yards rushing against Ole Miss. And then 100 last week. So they're not running the football with that same proficiency. They're going to have to throw it a little bit. Now, our secondary is certainly conducive to the forward pass, right? I'm sure they're thinking, hey, let's just throw the football a little bit more. Last week, really not quite as much offense for them, obviously, until late in the ballgame. Just 14 of 24 for 150 yards. But when you look at total offensive numbers, it just hasn't been one of these things you look at and you get ultra excited about. I'm sure Arkansas fans are kind of on the fence about all this thing with Dan Enos. But I think a lot of it's just you changed philosophy so much since he's left. You changed your personnel a little bit. I don't know that he's got exactly who he wants or what he wants. But it's all very interesting. You start looking inside these numbers, and you begin to see why Arkansas fans are upset, and you get to see why they're not finishing ball games. This is because offensively they're not able to get to make plays. It's been a much different deal in defense. They're much improved. Much improved. All right, let's get these individual numbers here. That's what you really want to see, right? Steve, who do I have to look for? What number is he? Well, I don't know about the numbers, but let me just tell you this. So A.J. Green's been their leading rusher. And 239 yards, but he hadn't played as much. Now, to Sam Pittman said earlier this week that they do expect Green and DeBinion to kind of share carries, and so there'll be a lot of that this week. Of course, Rocket, and again, man, God bless the kid. 94 carries, just 91 yards in 3 games, and again, it's supposed to be the money year for him, but they don't have a running back averaging more than 35 yards a game. KJ's only averaging 23 a game, and a lot of that's just not necessarily designed quarterback run, just KJ going and making a play. But we do expect to see Green get more work this week. He has been the most explosive back. What's interesting, just 38 carries, and DeBinion has 65. And DeBinion's a guy that fights really hard in the red zone. So you'd expect him when they get down a little bit closer, he's probably a good companion back for KJ. But AJ has been a little more explosive. And, of course, 1 carry for 55 yards for Green makes up nearly 25% of his production. So when you begin to add in the other 37 carries, the numbers aren't quite as good. But he does have some explosiveness that perhaps DeBinion doesn't. KJ has thrown all but 2 passes this year. Jacoby Criswell had the other 2. But KJ, 124 of 188, 6 interceptions, 14 touchdowns, averaging just over 207 yards through the air per game. Leading receiver has been Andrew Armstrong, 39 grabs on the year. There's really not anybody else even close. And he has 4 touchdowns, 485 yards of receiving. So, you start looking at this thing and you're thinking, hey, Florida International's coming up. I mean, you got the potential to have a 1,000-yard receiver. And listen, I know they're a game ahead of us, but you start looking at that and you begin to realize, hey, you got some chance. Isaac Tassel is the guy that made some plays against Ole Miss, if I remember correctly, and he's got 19 catches, and then Luke Haas with 16, and he's only played in 5 games. So this Arkansas offense, in many respects, is just not really firing on all cylinders anywhere. Only 3 receivers with more than 10 catches on the year. Not what people expected. Isaiah Satania caught his first touchdown pass last week. He's also kind of a nifty punt returner for them, and I do think special teams is going to matter in this ball game. I suspect it's going to be a lot closer than many people expect. Maybe I'm wrong. Former LSU Tiger Dwight McGlothern leads the team with 2 interceptions, returns 31 yards there. Hudson Clark, feel like a guy's been there forever, also has a pick. As a team, Arkansas has picked it off 7 times, and they've thrown 6. So +1 there for the Arkansas defense. Fumble returns, interesting. Arkansas is not putting the ball on the ground much. Arkansas has forced and recovered 4 fumbles on the season, and opponents have turned it over, have recovered just 1 Arkansas fumble. So you start thinking about ball security. You start thinking about special teams. It's interesting. And again, you start getting inside the numbers, and you get out of the emotion of it all. It's like, oh, we got to go on the road in the SEC. We're sure to lose. And you start looking at these numbers, and you begin to realize it's going to take a pretty special day for somebody to win this game, because neither of these teams are great. Neither. Now, Arkansas seems to have a ton of confidence. And Sam Pittman does a good job getting those guys to kind of hold the rope, if we talked about before. But we got a shot. We do. Now, Jaheim Thomas, very, very impressive. 69 tackles on the year, leads the team, 6.5 of those for loss, 3.5 sacks. Got a couple of pass breakups, quarterback hurries. They like to bring him on the blitz. He wears number 28. Chris Paul Jr. split in just 6 games, got 37 tackles. And Jaden Johnson also with 37. Landon Jackson had 11 tackles last week, which skyrocketed him up the leaderboard at Arkansas. He now has 30. And again, 11 of those just last week. So maybe kind of figuring some things out. And we talk about Hudson Clark, 28. But outside of that, it's just kind of been by committee. I mean, you know, you just haven't had the big breakout game. Eric Gregory is a guy that very talented player. Plays on the interior, just 12 tackles so far. But a lot of times, he's just trying to occupy, right? Trying to get in there, just kind of make a mess in the middle, let somebody else make a play. He is a guy that can get to the quarterback a little bit. And a lot of times, just kind of making people uncomfortable. It's going to be interesting to see how we attack this. Do we do a bunch of sprint outs? There's a lot of RPO stuff. I don't think we let Mike sit back there in the pocket a lot. That's just my honest opinion. Do you remember former Mississippi State commitment Ladarius Bishop? Remember him? From Smackover High School, if memory serves me correct. Flipped to Arkansas. Played in 7 games. He's got 1 tackle. And so I don't know if we lost in that deal or not. I know that he was a guy that played for a while and got a little bit banged up, but not much is happening with him. Cam Little is an absolute stud. There's no question about that. And so I think the potential for kickoff returns is somewhat diminished. I just don't expect this Arkansas special teams group to give us a whole lot. And I think that's, we have been really good this year, but I think their specialists are a little bit better, especially at punting. Not that we haven't been effective, but, Fletcher seems like a guy that can flip the field. So I'll give you my pick later in the game, later in the show, but I just wanted to kind of outline kind of how they got to where they are and kind of explain some of the angst, the Arkansas fan base. And again, until you really get into it, you look at it and say, well, they're 2-5, man, but they're playing well. I think when you look inside the numbers, you realize this is a team where so many things are a struggle. There's just so much it's a struggle for Arkansas offensively. The defense has kind of kept them in some games, and at times giving them the short field. But offensively, they're a team that's just very, very inconsistent. All right, time for today's Top 10 list. As always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. Blair is a mortgage professional. Look no further than Blair for all of your mortgage needs. Now with Priority One Mortgage. This is a guy that knows how to get things done. 22 years of experience in the industry. Can help you navigate through the labyrinth that exists because of underwriting. Things can get complicated. It's good to have a professional and the know-how to get you to the closing table. Visit him at closewithblair.com or give him a text or call today on his personal cell phone, 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. And the main thing, too, guys, things are changing. We mentioned the new law in Mississippi that enables a parent or older person, grandparent, whatever, to co-sign for a young person looking to get a head start in life. So that's a possibility for you, too. If you're considering doing that, Blair can help you with that. Again, that's closewithblair.com. All right, Stephen hits us up and says, hey, Steve, how about your favorite horror movies? And here's my take on it. I wanted to make it music-related. We do have a couple of covers involved here. But it's some rock songs from some amazing films over the years. You ready for that? You good with that? Well, that's what we're going to do. And not all these are necessarily horror films, but they're just kind of scary, but they're films that we all love. All right, number 10, way back from 1978, the original Halloween with Michael Myers. You know, that's a franchise that endures. It's Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper. Number 10. Anytime we can get some cowbell on the list, we should. And for all of you young bucks out there that say, Steve, I don't know what you're talking about. When we do the I Got a Fever and the only prescription is more cowbell, that's the SNL skit where they're pretending to be Blue Oyster Cult and recording Don't Fear the Reaper. Legendary. All right, number 9, a band that I love, I've seen multiple times. I think Gavin Rossdale is an underappreciated musical genius in many respects. He had a great song on the American Werewolf in Paris remake, and the movie itself was just kind of okay, but the great song Mouth from Bush was a part of that. It's the transformation scene. And anytime we can get Bush on the show, it's always good. All right, number 8, kind of a hidden gem here. And I don't know that a lot of people would have this on their Pantera Top 10. I didn't, but man, this is a great track. It's actually from the motion picture soundtrack from The Crow with Brandon Lee. And God rest his soul, man. You know, those of you that haven't seen the movie, The Crow is fabulous. But Brandon Lee was shot and killed during the production of that movie. They thought that they had a blank in the gun. They didn't. He gets shot and dies. Of course, Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, arguably the greatest martial artist that's ever lived. It's a song from Pantera called The Badge. Be sure and check it out. I think you'll enjoy that one. Really true to the Pantera sound. Number 7, this is a cover because I don't like the original as much, even though it was kind of one of those songs in The Lost Boys that we all kind of thought, hey, this is super cool because you hear those angelic voices, saying, cry little sister. It was covered a few years back by a band called Seasons After, and their version of the song is much better than Gerald McMahon's. And all credit to Gerald for penning this great song. He just didn't have the pipes to maybe bring this thing out like Seasons After. So it's Cry Little Sister, and again, a cover of the theme song of The Lost Boys. One of the greatest movies of my generation, The Lost Boys. And I guess maybe in many respects, I am a lost boy. I don't know. Number 6, and listen, I brought this in because number 1, it's Friday the 13th. But it's also Alice Cooper. Now, the song doesn't really hold up. At the time, it seemed so great. I think maybe it's because of the cinematography that was in the video, because they had like footage from the movie. But it was when Jason came back. And it's the song He's Back. I mean, it's kind of Alice Cooper doing some synth pop stuff. Again, it doesn't really hold up, but it's true to the movie itself. And the movie was amazing. It's one of the first rated R movies I was able to go to without any issue, right? As a young person. That used to be a big thing. Back in those days, they'd have somebody standing there watching at the door to make sure that teenagers didn't sneak into rated R movies. Nowadays, you can just get whatever you want on the internet. But Alice Cooper's He's Back, the man behind the mask, number 6. Number 5, a band that was, a lot of people expected some big things to happen with this band. It didn't really work out, but they did the entire motion picture soundtrack to Trick or Treat. That's a horror film that featured Gene Simmons and a cameo from Ozzy Osbourne. It's a band Fastway, and the title track, Trick or Treat. There's some really good rock on there. It's very 80s, right? It doesn't hold up in a lot of respects. But Fastway, again, a band that, Pete Way, incredible. But maybe check that out. It's a band that I wanted to kind of put on the list today. Now, the top 4, all going to be bands going to be songs from movies Number 4, from the Stephen King classic, Pet Sematary. And they're rebooting this for a new generation. I'm going to go see it. We'll see. But it's the Ramones' Pet Sematary. They actually had 2 songs on that soundtrack. They also had Sheena is a Punk Rocker. If you remember when Gage got ran over, the guy driving the van, that's what he was listening to. Sheena is a Punk Rocker. But Pet Sematary, I Don't Want to Be Buried in a Pet Cemetery. That's a theme song from that great movie, from the Ramones. Number 3, The Hellraiser series, man, that was one of those things too. Horror movies were huge when I was a teenager. Huge. It seemed like every year we got a new Halloween or a Friday the 13th or a Nightmare on Elm Street or Hellraiser. And Motorhead in Hellraiser 3 sings the song Hellraiser on the motion picture soundtracks. There you go, Motorhead getting a Lemmy reference, and again, God rest his soul. Our friends in Storage 24 recently played the Whiskey A Go-Go and opened for a band called Flaw, you may be somewhat familiar with. And Fred and the guys went out to California, played a show. Matter of fact, you go look at their social media, it's kind of lighting up a little bit from people in California that got a chance to see Jackson, Mississippi's own Storage 24, and while they were there, they went and ate lunch at the Rainbow. And Fred even posted a picture of the statue of Lemmy, because Lemmy was a regular at the Rainbow. All right, number 2, another cover song. It's actually a cover of an Alice Cooper track from the movie Shocker. If you've never seen Shocker, it's kind of a silly movie, and many horror films were. But basically, it's a guy that survives the electrocution of a death sentence and then becomes this supervillain. And they covered No More Mr. Nice Guy. And actually, I think as great as the original is, I think Megadeth's rendition of that song is really, really good. That's why it's number 2 on the list. Number 1, though, because you know that 80s metal is near and dear to your good friend and host's heart. It's Dawkins' Dream Warriors, which was the theme song of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Patricia Arquette was in the film. And had a chance to meet Don Dokken here before the world went crazy. And we talked a little bit about some of their history. And that's one of the things that he mentioned, is that a very young Patricia Arquette, before anybody even knew who she really was, kind of debuted in the Dream Warriors video. And kind of crazy to see how far things have come for her in her career. But Dream Warriors and that great guitar from George Lynch, ultimately on that album, this song made the move from the motion picture soundtrack to the Back for the Attack album, which is my favorite Dokken album of all time. I think from start to finish, it just holds up better than anything else they did. Nothing against Tooth and Nail, even though I think the production value on Tooth and Nail is a little bit basic. Of course, that was the second album from Dokken. I don't think the record company threw enough money behind it. Production value got better, as did the songwriting on Under Lock and Key, but then Back for the Attack came, and from start to finish, it's absolutely phenomenal, starting with Kiss of Death, going all the way out to Mr. Scary. And Dream Warriors, of course, appears on that album. So that's your top 10 list. So, Stephen, thanks for the suggestion. As rock goes horror. And I know many of you these days, there's a band that I don't really like. And a lot of it's just because of the fact that, I don't know, it was interesting in the beginning. A band called Ice Nine Kills, like everything they do is based, they write songs on horror movies. And they did a little meet and greet here as of late. They've done their own kind of movie. They've got a huge following. It's not really my thing, even though I think the guys are especially talented. It's just the lyrical content just doesn't appeal to me. But they have built a career around writing rock songs and metal songs that are inspired by movies, whether it be the shower scene or anything like that. I mean, that's just kind of what they do. And it's a little bit hokey to me. But you may like it, so I just wanted to mention those guys as somebody when we're doing our Rock Goes Horror list. And Roy will have this up for you on Spotify today. You can find it under his handle, Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC67. And you can also find him on Twitter. The best way to get his suggestions is to hit Roy up. I get a lot of notifications, and I don't always see them, and that's not a weird flag. So I'm just kind of telling you the best way to do it is to send it to Roy. But you can find me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. And thanks so much for your support of the Top 10 list. Appreciate so many people that come up to me at book signings and appearances and say, hey, Steve, I love the Top 10 list. I've got other people that say I always fast forward through. I'm not a music guy. That's cool too. My feelings aren't hurt, but I think it's one of the things that makes us a little bit different. And so appreciate, again, your support of the Top 10 list, these many years. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Campus Bookmart's been around forever and a day, man. You know that Miss Kathy Brown went to some horror films in her day. You know it. And now she's arguably the best buyer when it comes to Mississippi State merchandise in the country. The most extensive selection of Mississippi State merchandise only available at Campus Bookmart. Next time you're in town, go by and see their smiling faces. Neatly positioned on the backside of campus, you take that turn off 182 at the Trooper Station. Follow it on around, it winds up right there on the left-hand side just before you get to campus is Campus Bookmart. Go in and find some things to outfit your family, your home, your pet, your RV, your office, whatever you need. They can help you find anything Mississippi State related. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. And that gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. Again, that's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. All right, let's take a look. It's a limited schedule in the Southeastern Conference this week. So I'll give you my picks. I think it's going to be a very entertaining weekend of college football in many respects. All right, so of course, Mississippi State and Arkansas, we are the long 11 a.m. game. We will be on ESPN. There are some tickets still available if you're on the fence about going. Again, I don't know what to expect from that crowd. I do think it'll be bigger than the average 11 a.m. game. I don't think it'll be anywhere close to what you normally see, in an afternoon or a night game at Razorback Stadium. I think some of that too. I think some people are just kind of getting ready for basketball. But State and Arkansas, I saw an opening point spread of like 9.5, and now it's down to around 6. So some money coming in on the Bulldogs. And I don't necessarily understand why, but I do think State covers. I think we're going to have a tough time winning. I'm actually picking Arkansas to win, and it pains me to say that because I do think this is a winnable game for us. I just think when you look at the fact that, number one, State has had so many issues on both sides of the football. Arkansas is much better and more complete on defense. And I think defense is what ultimately wins this game. I think special teams are really good for both teams. I would give Arkansas a slight nod in that respect. And so when you start breaking everything down and you factor in that State's likely starting Mike Wright at quarterback, nothing against Mike, but it's almost like week one, right? You got to go back and you got to figure some things out. Now, the good thing is Mike is not a newcomer to starting games in the Southeastern Conference. So I do expect a really close game. And again, I think State's capable of winning this thing. I'm certainly hoping State wins the game. I just really struggle to think when you begin to break down how even these two teams are and the fact that defense and special teams kind of favors them, I think State's going to need probably a non-offensive touchdown to win this game, whether it be a pick six or a scoop and score. I think you're going to need the defense to help in many respects, and that has been a real challenge. And offensively, State has gotten better. And then all of a sudden, you look up and now Will Rogers is banged up. And so while I'm hopeful, I'm just not optimistic. All right, Tennessee at Alabama. I just don't know what to think about this Alabama team. And again, I thought Tennessee would be the second best team in the East. They are. I thought they'd still be better. And Alabama, again, every week we just say, Alabama this and Alabama that. They just keep finding a way to win. They're not winning with many style points. And, of course, after what happened last year with Hendon Hooker, the big drive late in the ball game to beat Alabama, you know that Nick Saban and those guys really want it because they never lose to Tennessee. But here they are. And they're going to Tuscaloosa, and I think this Alabama offense at times is very pedestrian. I don't think they have the offensive skill they ordinarily have. And Milroe, of course, is kind of making some plays when it breaks down and becomes backyard football. I do think Tennessee has the athletes to run with Alabama on defense. But I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I like Alabama to win. I'm even taking Alabama to cover. I just think that Milton, with Nick Saban and his staff kind of disguising some coverages, I think they'll be able to bait him into some mistakes. And Milton, of course, not Hendon Hooker, and nor is it fair to expect him to be, but I think ultimately he struggles in this game. May look up and feel completely different later that afternoon, but I think that's probably going to be the case that Alabama wins this game and probably doesn't have a lot of anxiety there in the second half. South Carolina at Missouri. Now, I don't know what to think about this South Carolina team, but I did say when we lost to them that was going to be one we looked back and said, you know what, that's a loss we shouldn't have had. And they're 2-4, and this loss gets kind of worse by the day. It was a competitive game with Florida last week at Williams-Brice, and Florida makes a play late. Graham Mertz with a nice touchdown throw late to give Florida the win, 41-39. But this South Carolina defense is just not very good. I mean, you start working through this, and again, you go all the way back to week 1. They give up 31 to North Carolina. They gave up 21 to Furman. 24 to Georgia, and Georgia just didn't really play that well. State scores 30 on them. Tennessee 41, Florida 41. I think this Missouri offense with Cook under center is kind of finding itself. I think in the end, being at home and then being the more complete team with a lot of confidence. I mean, Missouri's got juice right now. I mean, the big win in Lexington last week, I mean, if you weren't believing on Missouri then, you should be now. They've made me a believer, and yes, their schedule has been somewhat pedestrian, but how do you overlook that loud win against Kansas State, and then, again, the media darling Kentucky? I think South Carolina's in trouble. I don't think South Carolina can stop Missouri. I think Spencer Rattler can make some plays. I think Missouri takes this game and continues to have a big year. Ole Miss at Auburn. This is the Freeze Bowl. I think this actually helps us. And you say, but Steve, what are you talking about? I remember Jackie Sherrill said years ago that you can't coach emotionally week after week after week after week. I mean, you can't go up there and tell your kids, hey, this is the biggest game of the year. Everybody's got to be, on top of everything. And then the next week do the same thing. You've got to be able to kind of be even killed, kind of that Ron Polk approach, and then got to be able to turn it on. You know as well as I do, this game means a ton to Hugh Freeze and to the players around him. You also know that Ole Miss understands, hey, they're playing for something. They're trying to stay in contention for an SEC West title and potentially go into Alabama. Go into Atlanta. And yes, they're behind Alabama and don't hold the tiebreaker. But in order to keep pace, they got to find a way to win this game. I think the main thing, if Auburn can win the first quarter, I think you got a shot. But that Auburn defense here as of late has been a little bit suspect. But you know as well as I do, this is one that is more than just a football game. Auburn's 3-3. They're 0-3 in the conference. But, you look here in recent weeks, I mean, they give up 27 to A&M, only scored 10. They did a really good job against Georgia, even though Georgia didn't play well. And Georgia didn't even feel like an AFL championship caliber team than the number one. But they're in the ball game, and Georgia makes the plays late. And then LSU, one of the better LSU offenses we've seen in recent years, puts up 48 points. I just don't think Auburn can score with Ole Miss. Now, of course, Ole Miss against Arkansas, they kind of held the game down, But it'll be an emotional game. And I think emotional games, win or lose, take a real toll on your team. I think Auburn will be up for this. I think ultimately Ole Miss will win. And then all of a sudden you begin to look at the fact that Mississippi State's coming in. So if we can win this week, you start thinking, okay, hey, maybe we can go to the Plains and pull something out there. I mean, it's not a great Auburn team. They weren't expected to be. But it's one of those deals where I think we can benefit from the fact that I think there's going to be so much of an emotional investment in this game that Auburn could come out flat next week. Now, if they win this week, completely out the window. Completely. I just don't think Auburn, in the end, has enough offensive firepower to win against Ole Miss, even if it's not a big shootout, even if it's just one of these games that gets into the 20s. I just think Auburn's going to struggle. That's not to say that Freeze won't have some new wrinkles dialed up, and I think the crowd will be good. It's a night game, so we'll watch, and ironically, we'll be pulling for Hugh Freeze. The world is crazy. Final game of the day is Army at LSU, and the spread on this thing is 30 points. I did the math myself. I think it goes all the way back to 18. Army's been beat by 30 points or more one time since then. LSU is going to win this game. And I think also, too, with the open date coming up, I think in the second half they'll coast a little bit. I think Army, too, with their style of offense, will shorten the game a little bit. I've seen some people predicting, 50, 60 points from LSU. I just don't think so. I don't. I think LSU wins the game, and I may look stupid on this, but I think Army's going to cover. It's going to take a nice effort, but if I look up at the end of the first quarter and it's a 10-7 game, I'm going to feel really good about this pick. But again, I think LSU wins this game without any real trepidation and continues to kind of move forward. I think that's kind of where we are. So in hindsight, here are your winners. As much as I hate to say it, Arkansas, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU. So Ole Miss is the only road team we're picking to win this week. Is State capable of winning this game against Arkansas? You better believe it. But I think we're going to need their help a little bit. And I just think there's just so many factors when you look at the changes that State apparently has had to make. Now, that could be a good thing, right? I mean, you may go out there and surprise them. And we talk about how good Arkansas has been in the first quarter. If you get a couple of stops and you're able to, let's say State goes up 10-0 or 10-7 in the first quarter, I think then you start to believe. And the one thing that I've been told all week is that Mike Wright is just a really cool customer. Mike is very relaxed. Mike is not a guy that gets wound up or sped up by the game. He is not going to be intimidated to go in there and play at Arkansas. This is a guy, obviously, that has played several games in his life against SEC opponents. So we'll see how things go. But I think Mike's one of those guys, too, that provides a different element to our offense. And it's one of the things you kind of begin to break down and look at, that Mike is a guy that kind of enables us to do some things that maybe perhaps we can't do with Will. And that's not to cast any aspersions at Will by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's one of those deals where the offense is a little more dynamic. When you're probably going to have a little more sideline-to-sideline type stuff. I think we sprint him out a lot, give him the run-pass option. But you're kind of looking at the numbers here. And, Mike was kind of a part-time starter last year. But looking last year, he played against Tennessee, played against Florida, had a big game against Florida. They win that game, 31-24. Of course, that game was in Nashville. But Mike was 10 of 16 for 108 yards. So depth of target, not really big there. Nor will it be for us. And then the week before they beat Florida, so it's not like they snuck up on Florida. Mike and the guys beat Kentucky. And that was a 12 of 23 game for 184 yards. And he did have the one pick there. But also, ran the football exceptionally well against Kentucky. Had 126 yards rushing. We're probably going to need an effort like that in order to win this game. Prior to that, he had a decent game against South Carolina and a loss. They lose at Missouri 17-14. But, Mike, decent job offensively. Played sparingly against Ole Miss and Georgia. Had a decent game against Elon, 18 of 29 for 245 yards and ran for 84. And you go back to last year's home opener when Mike Wright really kind of hit the scene and people were like, this guy's a star. 146 yards passing against Hawaii and 163 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So big day for Mike. So we're going to need that type of effort from Mike. We're going to need that level of production. We're going to need Mike to be a true dual-threat quarterback. And I think in order to really get this running game going, I think you've got to have the threat of the quarterback run. We are going to run some zone read stuff. We'll run some stretch stuff. There'll be some elements of some of the same things we do under Will. But I think with 2 weeks to prepare, you're going to see, I won't say a completely different offense, but I think you're going to see us do some things that are a little more maybe in line with what we've seen Mike do at Vanderbilt. I think we give him the ability to get outside and make some plays. And, I mean, you got to be careful. I mean, you can't just, run the guy 25 times a game, because you never know. Is Will back next week? I don't think so, but you run the risk of getting Mike banged up this week, and then if Will's not ready to go next week, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball. So you got to go win the game, but you also got to manage the season. So you can't go out there and call plays recklessly and just kind of put Mike in harm's way. Now, he's a competitor, but I'd like to see Mike get out of bounds rather than fight for additional yardage and take on those big linebackers getting downhill on him when they get to the sideline. So we will see how things progress, but I fully expect Mike to be under center. And if we can get off to a good start, I feel even better about the ball game, as will you. We're not breaking any news by saying that. But I think this is an Arkansas team that I think all the pressure is on them, because I think they feel in many respects their season is on the line. You lose this ball game and then go to the Swamp next week and get beat, well, you're already assured of a losing season. You'd be 2-7 at that point. And with 3 games to play, one of those, of course, a non-conference affair. But, you've still got some big games left to play beyond that, including that game against Missouri, a team that clearly is better than expectations. So, but that's how I see it. And maybe you see it differently. I'd love to come back on Monday and say, you know what, I was wrong. And I've read some people say, I think we're going to get beat really bad. I just, again, when you look at what Arkansas has done this year offensively, I don't think the numbers lend itself to that type of thinking. But we'll see. Anything's possible, especially with our defense. Hopefully we've shored some things up here in the open date.
And you know what they want to do. They want to run the football. They haven't been very successful doing that. But they also want to run some play action stuff and some RPO stuff and some intermediate passing game. They don't really stretch the field that much. And a lot of that's because they've been unable to really protect the quarterback. And I think their pass rush has improved here in recent weeks. It was great last year. But I think having a more mobile quarterback neutralizes some of that. And I think at the end of the day, it may boil down to which quarterback can make the best plays improvising when things break down. Will it be KJ? Will it be Mike Wright? We're about to find out. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. And we're already starting to get some inquiries about this. As I've shared many times, how many times do you travel with family and everybody's got to get multiple hotel rooms, and then the cost of all that is just absolutely ridiculous? What if you could rent a really, really nice place, a super nice place where everybody could stay together? You could have your meals together. You could cook. You could order out. You could stock the fridge with your own beer instead of having to go down to a lobby somewhere and pay $7 a beer and have other people kind of, jumping into your conversation. You can pick the games you want to watch, right? Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Be sure and Google that. Now, we've got a promo code for you, but in order for this to work, you've got to use it through the Evolve website, and that's BSR10. That gets you 10% off. You're going to be amazed at the pictures you see. But you can book through Airbnb and you can book through Vrbo, but the code doesn't work. So you got to go through Evolve to get the 10% off, the BSR10. So it's the old clubhouse there at the golf course, and it's at 2 Sterling Drive. And again, I just encourage you, Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse. The thought to me, like this weekend, we're headed to Arkansas, and all the family's coming in. And, you know how it is, especially when you're parents. You love to have everybody under one roof, right? Especially when there's kids involved. That way, if somebody gets up and starts making breakfast, the grandkids can get up and go do that. Mom and dad can sleep in a little bit, But if you're doing it at a hotel room, it's completely different. Not to mention, it's so much more expensive. And this huge fire pit area in the back, and of course there's a couple of wet bars in there. So no matter what you need, no matter what you're looking for, whether you're coming for a ball game weekend or maybe you're working in town, right? Maybe you're bringing a team in. Maybe you're doing something on Mississippi State campus, your business proposals, or you're just working the Golden Triangle and you'd like to have your team centrally located. This is going to be a very economical and a very, very practical solution for you. It's the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Be sure and Google that and use the Evolve site promo code BSR10. BSR10 only through Evolve for the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. All right, so let's jump on board here. The new Mississippi State commitment, we picked it up yesterday. Ashawn Shepard, originally from Brandon High School, now by way of East Mississippi Community College. Been hearing that he was on the verge of committing now for about 2 weeks, and then just Wednesday I was told that he might just wait and do it on his official visit. I think he was kind of encouraged. It's like, hey, if listen, let's kind of help us get some juice here. And he decided to go ahead and make the move, and knows Will Rogers, calls Will Rogers his guy. Looking through the offer list here, and, covered this with him yesterday just to be sure. But, of course, Mississippi State, Jacksonville State, McNeese State, Nicholls State, Southern Miss, UAB, West Virginia, Western Kentucky. West Virginia always mining the Mississippi Junior College ranks. So just the 2 Power 5 offers there. What I would say about Ashawn is that he is a piece, right? When you look at what we're losing on the defensive line this year, you're going to have some depth. You're going to have to bring in some guys that can compete to settle 2 deep depth chart. And State's going to probably sign about a dozen or more junior college or transfer portal players here in the next couple months. And so I've read some mixed reviews about Ashawn Shepard from some of our fans, many of which have never seen him play. But I do like the get. I do think it's important to kind of get something going here, to kind of get the ball rolling here, and also it enables you to kind of build up a sense of urgency with some of the other players that you're recruiting. Now, we're going to bring in some other guys. Of course, one of his teammates, Sean Washington, signed with Georgia. We do think LSU is probably the leader, but they're both expected to visit Mississippi State the weekend of December the 8th. Of course, Tyler Woodard currently committed to Mississippi State, expected to come in that same weekend. I think that's going to be a big JUCO weekend for us. Got some guys coming in on the first and some guys coming in that second weekend. But we're kind of navigating through this, learning new names as we go. And there will be more new names, and we're getting them every day. It seems like every time I turn around, I'm getting a text or a call from somebody within the network and saying, hey, just want to let you know, I just added a Mississippi State offer to this particular profile. We compare some notes, and we try to produce them as bones over on the site. It gives us an idea of who we should interview. And so Ashawn Shepard's a guy that we've been aware of for some time. Now he's part of the team. Now we get ready to kind of move forward, and got a couple of years of eligibility left, and he'll come join the Bulldog roster and tells me he can't wait to be a Bulldog. But there's a lot more out there, sure. And we talked about, Sean Washington's a guy originally from Warren Easton High School in Metro New Orleans, signed with Georgia. LSU appears to be the favorite there, but, we'll see. Supposedly he's going to come on this official visit with Tyler Woodard and Ashawn, and we'll see how things go. But there will be some new names emerge. A lot of people have said, Steve, why are we going to junior college ranks when we can use the portal? Well, I think there's a couple reasons why. Number one, this year you've seen a few more D1 bounce backs in the JUCO for one reason or another. There is some talent there. Is there the same level of talent there was before the portal? No, I don't agree with that. I do think there are some really good players, and apparently the University of Georgia does as well, because we're offering many of the same players they are. LSU has offered some guys in the junior college ranks too. So I think part of it is, number one, and we've had some great success in the past with junior college players, but it's been a mixed bag. And I think because of the fact this year you need some guys that can come in, guys that maybe you've known for a while, like a guy like Ashawn Shepard. He's a guy that state recruited at a high school. He just ultimately had to take the junior college route. And so now he comes in again, and again, he's a piece. We don't expect to build a defense around him. We just expect him to come in here and compete and be a solid two-deep guy for us. But we have some massive needs along the defensive line. And when you begin to think about Calvin Dinkins, when you begin to think about Trevion Williams, both of those guys have had major injuries this year. Are they going to be ready to go next year? We hope. We hope. And you're going to have to be careful with them in the spring, But you got to have some guys to help you get through spring practice and hopefully provide some depth. And we're going to need some difference makers too. We're not just in this business to go out there and try to find backup. We've got to find guys who can come in here and make a difference in our program. Jaden Crumberty's going to be gone next year. Nathan Pickering's going to be gone next year. DeMonte Russell has a COVID year available, and perhaps he'll use it, But when you start working through all of this, you begin to realize that defensive front for the Bulldogs, it's got a lot of veteran players this year, is going to be pretty thin next year. And the guys that you had hoped that were going to be your two deepers this year and your starters next year, a couple of those guys are hurt. So, yes, it makes perfect sense for us to do this. And a lot of people say, let's go get guys in the portal. Well, I think you got to use every resource you have. You'll get the best possible players you have. And you look at our batting average on the portal, especially this year, hasn't been very good. For every Makai Polk, there's probably 5 or 6 other guys that just kind of make a nominal contribution to the program. And so whether it's a missed evaluation, whether the player himself is just not picking it up, I don't know, but I know that you're going to see more junior college names in the weeks to come. And then when the portal window opens after the season is over, we're going to be very active in that market too. I think when it's all said and done, State will have, 13, 14 players, either from the junior college ranks or the NCAA transfer portal. I think that's what you should go ahead and expect for. And I share that, and we've talked about that multiple times on the show. With the schedule we have next year and the roster attrition we're going to have, just through graduation in and of itself is enough to say we've got to go out and get some older players so we can be competitive next year. And you start looking into this in the totality of the situation. Zach Arnett, year one, has not been what we had hoped. And it sounds so silly to say that at times, but that's the reality of it. We were hoping to be 4-2 at this point. We're 3-3. And again, that bad loss on the road at South Carolina, right? But it's more about how we played. But when you begin to think about, okay, let's say we get to 6-6. Let's say we get to 7-5. And then next year, against a very challenging schedule, let's say you don't get bowl eligible. I think if you're Arnett, then you're really in trouble. There are a lot of people already kind of calling for his head 6 games into his tenure, which I think is way too premature. But when you begin to think about what you're facing next year, you've got to make some personnel decisions that enable you to be more competitive. You can't have back-to-back mediocre or bad years and expect to hang around. I think we all see it for what it is. One thing that I'd said at the beginning of the year, I expected us to have a really good year this year. And I remember people were like, oh, I'm thinking 6-6, 7-5. And I said back then, I said, if we go 6-6 and 7-5 without a major injury, then we probably have hired the wrong guy. And I think now that we're 3-3, you begin to kind of look at that and ask yourself, and listen, I get it. Yeah, we all want the same things, is to win. And there are some people that are very outspoken in their beliefs. And what more times than what happens is a lot of people that really want to say, let's just be patient here. It's just 6 games. Let Zach work his way through it. The anti-Arnett folks, the ones that are pro-coaching change, they're gonna argue you down and say we can't let our program drop off the cliff and into the abyss. That's true. And there are other people that say, well, we're 6 games into this thing. It's far too early to make the decision. That's true too. And so, but what happens is those that are out there that are like, hey, let's stay the course, they're not going to get out there and respond. They're not going to be very vocal because they get shouted down. But I can tell you there are a lot of people behind the scenes, despite what you may hear, that say, you know what, we just got to stay the course here. Now, our business is relying on Mississippi State being successful. I mean, you don't, like when we're losing, you don't really want to listen to the show. You'll listen when it's coaching change. You'll listen when we're winning big. Listen, we're previewing the season, right? But the reality of it is you don't want to associate yourself when things aren't going well. It's just kind of how things are. So you don't subscribe, you don't buy Mississippi State merchandise, you don't do any of those things. So everything that we do is very reliant. And I shared to somebody recently, like business coaching changes are good for business. I mean, you remember how much if you were a Gene's Page subscriber, you realize how much traction we got during the assistant coaching hires. How much that was going on. We had a ton of that. And so change is good for business. But nothing matters more than winning. And when you win, people are like, they want to be a part of this. They want to read everything they get. Guys, we're doing 10 and 12 stories a day right now. Baseball, basketball, men's and women's, and football. We've got an army of people, and we're producing an army load of content. It's a lot easier to get your content received when your football team is winning. So we need to win, period. It needs to start this weekend. I hope it can. But I think that one of the important aspects of every bit of this is that we've had some injuries, but I think the bigger issue is the fact that I think that we probably rushed the transition offensively. And, Leach did the same thing, right? When Leach got here, it's like, hey, I know what you guys ran in the past. I'm doing what I do. And I think when you're Mike Leach, maybe you can afford to do that a little bit, but I don't know that if we shouldn't have been a little more gradual, even with Leach and with now. But the biggest thing to me is the recruiting misses that have preceded this. And the first thing that, again, the anti-Arnett crowd will jump on there and say, oh, well, Arnett recruited all these guys. That's not necessarily true. The way that we had the system set up before, Dave Emmerich and those guys had to kind of have to sign off. And there were guys that our defensive coaches wanted to offer that they were not allowed to offer because of the way that we had all this bureaucracy set up. And so we've got some players. We don't have enough players. We've had some players leave, and many of those players have gone somewhere else and hadn't done anything there either. So again, that speaks to evaluation. We got to do a better job there. Well, speaking of good evaluations, Mississippi State with a huge baseball recruiting win on yesterday is Richie Swain from Missouri picks your Bulldogs over a host of offers. His final 3 were Arkansas, Missouri, and Mississippi State. Took official visits to all, maybe not official, but he took visits to all 3 places, met with staffs, got the offers, and picked Mississippi State primarily because of Justin Parker. You can go read that article right now for free over genespage.com. We still got a couple other recruits we got to catch up with. There's one that I'll speak with on Sunday. But this Richie Swain kid, he has an edge about him. It's a competitive edge. And I don't mean he comes across cocky. Like he made mention that he can't wait to pitch in front of our crowds because he thinks that will only stoke the fires of competitiveness even more. His exact quote was, "I think I could be pretty dangerous in front of that crowd." How many times when you look in recent years have we had guys that kind of shied away from the moment, where the moment appeared to be too big for them? I mean, you can do the math yourself. And you cannot win in the Southeastern Conference with guys that won't compete in his own. You just can't. You've got to have guys that are willing to compete and guys that are willing to go out there and put their stuff up there and say, you know what, this is what we're doing. And if you hit it, you hit it. But we're going to go out here and compete. I'm not giving you a free pass. And that's what we've always talked about, walks and hit by pitches. Now, that's part of baseball, but we got to reduce that. And typically guys that go out there and have that competitive fire, guys that that understand what a home field advantage feels like, guys that understand what it takes to go out there, what it does mentally to the hitter, to be able to use that to themselves, that they're cheering for you, not against you. And then in times you go on the road and they are cheering against you, but you've got to have some mental fortitude. And with all due respect to everybody that's ever come through the Mississippi State baseball program, there have been some times we have lacked the intestinal fortitude to get things done. I like guys that want the baseball. I like guys that want to be in the big moment. I don't want guys that just want to have a T-shirt and a hat. You know, they walk around, well, I was on a team for a semester. I don't want those dudes. And now this is a guy that's going to be a draft risk. I'm just going to kind of lay it out there for you. Right-hand side, throwing 94. And I got this information from a friend. Already 2,700 spin rate on a slider. Could easily be a 3,000 RPM slider in time when he's throwing 95, 96. You got to go sign these guys. You do. You have to. And we've been able to get some of these guys to come to school. This is a big-time commitment. And again, Final Three of Arkansas, Missouri. And any time that we beat Arkansas head-to-head for a kid, especially in their recruiting footprint like Missouri, it's a big deal. And you attribute a lot of that to Justin Parker. And there was so many people out there that, that gave up on a Justin Parker hire. And I go back, I think about that so many times. I had some people telling me he just didn't think this year was the right year to make a move. And then all the things, all the unrest at South Carolina, where they were going to leave, go to Miami. Parker wasn't interested in going to Miami. But there's all this stuff going on in the backdrop. And I'll never forget, I say that, as long as Justin Parker's here, I won't forget this. I had a friend of a friend that said, hey, this isn't over thing. This thing with Parker isn't over yet. And it's like it felt like State was about to make a hire. Didn't work out. And we went full bore after Justin Parker, and we get him. And every time that I interview these kids that are coming here to pitch, whether they be transfers or whether it be high school players, whatever, the first thing that they mention is just Justin Parker. It just does things a little bit differently. That he's really big into physical development. He is a guy that wants to recruit players that have a certain level of mental toughness, and that he is a guy that just really wants to go get war horses and ride them to Omaha, rather than just, hey, let's go get a developmental kid. And there's a developmental piece with every baseball player and every student athlete that ever makes the jump from high school to college. But I think when you start getting guys that are getting pro potential and pro scouts are beginning to show them some interest, I think those are the kids you got to go get. We can't just go out of here and go get, hey, this kid, he grew up in Nettleton, and he's been a Bulldog fan his whole life, man. His family season ticket holders, and we got to go get that kid, man. Listen, that used to be the case. Wasn't always the case, but it used to be the case. Now, it's one thing to take that kid as a walk-on, but in order for us to get to where we want to go, we got to stop treating this thing like it's a Boy Scouts. Well, nobody will want to wear that M over S more than this kid. Let me tell you this, and I got a kid of my own that played college baseball somewhere else, and I can assure you, it would have never, wearing the M over S would never have been a bigger deal to anybody than him. It'd be a bunch of people that shared that enthusiasm. But, he comes up here and he comes to camp and does things, and it didn't work out. So you move on. So we can't recruit like we did years ago where, well, there's this Johners kid and we're just going to let him walk on and at least he'll get to wear the uniform. I don't want those kids either. I don't. And I know that may hurt some feelings. I don't want them. I don't want anybody to be able to buy their way onto our baseball team. Because with the roster limits these days, I think everybody that's going to compete, everybody that is in that uniform has to be able to compete and make this team better, period. You can't say, okay, well, this is we're going to just go with these 20 guys, and the rest of these guys, we'll just fill these things out, and maybe they'll make a donation to the NIL. No, that's not going to work. And you guys know I'm envious of LSU. I am. We should be what they are. They've out-recruited us, and in many respects, they've put us an infrastructure together that is superior to ours. We have the better stadium. It's not close. They got some very rabid fans, too, and again, a lot of them only show up when it's a big ball game weekend. We beat them in that respect. But the way that they recruit, they're willing to go out there and fence back and forth with major league teams, and Lamonis has been willing to do that a little more than some other coaches in our past have. But, we've got to fill our roster with war daddies in every aspect. And I think this Richie Swain thing is a big, big step in that direction. This is the caliber of pitchers that Justin Parker is going after and winning. And you go beat Dave Van Horn head-to-head for a kid that actually lives closer to Fayetteville than he does to Starkville, that's a big deal. It is. All right, let's get ready to get out of here. Another update, too. When the Bottom Falls will be finished production November 9th. They will ship to Madison. I will sign them. They will then go to you. So we're less than 30 days out now from it being in your mailbox. It's been frustrating, and again, things beyond your control. But it's my name on the book, so people contact me. So that's the information. If you haven't ordered, you can go ahead and order now. You know when it's going to be here. I know some people ordered like as soon as the book got finished, and so I appreciate your patience and your support. But When the Bottom Falls will be officially released here in just a few weeks in the month of November. And looking forward to it. Looking forward to reading your reviews. And, of course, I've been doing a lot of recovery-related speaking engagements, and we'll do a bunch more as we get into the holiday season. Hopefully I can make it to December 10th. If I live long enough to make it to December 10th, I'll be clean and sober 32 years. And so I feel like I've learned a few things along the way that I could share with other people. While you're at that website, whenthebottomfalls.com, you can order all my sports books there, Flim Flam, Alpha Dog, Stark Villains, and Dog Pile. And that's a great Christmas gift. I know many of you, well, Steve, I got Flim Flam. And it's what's always interesting to me. People say, hey, I got your book. Well, which one? Oh, I didn't know you wrote but one. No, I've written 6 now. So you can get caught up there and would certainly appreciate that. I know there's some Bulldog fans in your life that don't have Dog Pile that would love to have it. I think every Bulldog fan deserves to have a copy of Dog Pile. We won the NAFL championship, and you've got an actual documentation of the event as it happened. From start to finish through the season. You get to ride the entire season up and down. It's not just what happened at Omaha. It's everything that happened over the course of the season. I saved every interview from the season, just in case. And this time it paid off. Come join us over at genespage.com. And, of course, Stark Villains gear available at starkvillains.com. It's always a nice gift idea as well. And come join our merry band of misfits over at genespage.com. You get 1 month for $1. Come try us out. And, again, that'll get you into November. And I think you'll probably want to stick around. Nobody providing more Mississippi State content than we are. Ever. Be sure and come check us out. Hey, I'm going to get dressed, and we're going to get on the road. And, of course, I'm later leaving than I want to be, but such is life. You guys have a great weekend. We'll see you on the other side when we get back from Fayetteville, Arkansas. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.